Imagine walking into a room full of Wall Street's smartest investors and telling them you're about to bet against the American economy. They'd call you insane. In 2005, that's exactly what Dr. Michael Burry did. People laughed at him. His own investors tried to sue him. Even his colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. But 3 years later, in 2008, while millions of Americans lost their homes, while the global economy collapsed, Michael Burry walked away with $700 million. This is the true story of the man who saw the crash coming, when nobody else did, and how he bet everything on being right. So, who is Michael Burry? He's not your typical Wall Street hotshot. He's a medical doctor. He has only one working eye, and finance was never his plan. He was supposed to save lives, not make millions on Wall Street. But while Burry was doing exhausting hospital shifts during his medical residency, he was doing something strange in his free time. He was studying the stock market, obsessively. At night, he posted deep investment analysis on online forums. Not opinions, not hype, pure data. His analysis was so sharp that real investors started noticing. Big money investors. In 2000, Burry made a shocking decision. He quit medicine and started his own investment fund, Scion Capital. He began with just $1 million. Within a few years, that turned into hundreds of millions. But here's what made Burry different. He didn't follow the crowd. He ignored the news. He didn't care what other investors were doing. Instead, he read what others skipped. The boring stuff, the fine print. And in 2005, the American housing market is booming. Everyone's making money. Home prices are going up and up. Banks are handing out mortgages like candy on Halloween. People who couldn't afford houses were getting loans. People with no jobs were getting loans. People were lying on their applications, and banks didn't even care. Michael Burry started reading the actual mortgage bonds, the complex financial documents that most Wall Street traders never bothered to look at closely. And what he found shocked him. These mortgages were trash. Absolute garbage. They were called subprime mortgages, given to people who had almost no chance of paying them back. But here's the insane part. Wall Street had taken these terrible mortgages, packaged them together, and sold them as safe investments. They got top credit ratings, AA ratings, the same rating as U.S. government bonds. It was like taking 100 rotten apples, putting them in a fancy box, and convincing everyone it was premium fruit. Burry realized that when these mortgages started failing and people couldn't make their payments, the entire system would collapse like a house of cards. So he had an idea, a crazy, brilliant idea. Burry wanted to bet against these mortgages. But there was a problem. You couldn't really short mortgages the way you could short a stock. So he did something that had barely been done before. He went to the biggest banks on Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, and he asked them to create a new type of investment. It was called a credit default swap. Think of it like insurance. Burry would pay these banks a premium every month, kind of like an insurance payment. And if the mortgages failed, the banks would have to pay him massive amounts of money. The banks thought this was the easiest money they'd ever make. They thought Burry was an idiot. The housing market had never crashed nationwide in American history. Home prices always went up. So they happily took his money, month after month. But Burry was buying billions of dollars worth of these bets. He was betting his entire fund, all his investors' money on the housing market collapsing. And then he waited. Here's where it gets really tough. Burry made his bet in 2005, but the housing market didn't crash immediately. It kept going up through 2005, through 2006, into 2007. Every month, Burry had to pay millions in premiums to the banks. His fund was losing money. His investors were furious. They called him constantly, screaming at him. They demanded their money back. Some threatened to sue him. His own employees thought he'd lost his mind. The financial media mocked him. Other hedge fund managers laughed at him at conferences. Imagine knowing you're right, having done all the research, but watching everyone around you think you're completely insane. Watching your investors abandon you. Watching your reputation get destroyed. Most people would have given up. Most people would have admitted defeat and moved on. But Michael Burry has something called Asperger's syndrome, which he's been open about. One characteristic is the ability to focus intensely on something even when facing social pressure to stop. He knew he was right, so he held on. Then, in early 2007, cracks started to appear. Mortgage defaults began rising. Subprime lenders started going bankrupt. By summer 2007, the problems were getting bigger. And then, in 2008, everything collapsed. Bear Stearns collapsed. Lehman Brothers collapsed. The entire financial system was on the edge of complete destruction. The government had to step in with massive bailouts. Millions of people lost their homes. Millions lost their jobs. Retirement accounts were wiped out. It was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And Michael Burry's bet? It paid off spectacularly. Those credit default swaps that everyone mocked? They exploded in value. The banks that sold them to him now owed him enormous amounts of money. When everything was settled, Michael Burry had made over $700 million in profit for his fund. He personally made around $100 million. The man everyone called crazy was right. The entire financial establishment was wrong. So, what can we learn from Michael Burry's story? First, sometimes the crowd is wrong. Just because everyone believes something doesn't make it true. The entire world believed the housing market was safe. They were all wrong. Second, doing your own research matters. Burry didn't listen to CNBC or follow what other investors were doing. He read the actual documents, did the boring work, and formed his own conclusions. Third, being right isn't always easy. Even when you're correct, you might face years of people doubting you, mocking you, and abandoning you. And finally, the biggest opportunities often come from seeing what others refuse to see. Michael Burry saw the 2008 crash coming because he was willing to look at the evidence everyone else ignored. Today, Burry is still investing. He still makes controversial bets. And whether he's right or wrong, he's never stopped thinking for himself. The question is, what is everyone believing today that might be completely wrong tomorrow? If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories from the world of money and finance. Drop a comment below. Do you think you could have held on like Michael Burry did, even when everyone thought you were crazy? See you in the next video.